Episode 2. Some days later, as I left Mr. Hamilton's office in South Kensington, under a bright blue, cloudless sky, I almost had to steady myself on the glossy black handrail as I descended the steps from the white, stucco-fronted house. I certainly paused for a moment. The rarefied London square lined with identical houses around a leafy railed enclosure fairly squeaked with gentrification. A Porsche purred by, an elegant woman with a Yorkshire Terrier slipped past, and only a discreet gold plaque beside the black front door behind me suggested I'd been anywhere remotely commercial, and not just taking tea with a friend. Not that I had friends who lived in houses like these, but neither had there been anything overtly businesslike about the conversation within. It had, to all intents and purposes, been a thoroughly convivial and pleasant affair, involving tea, Earl Grey of course, and 2 tiny biscuits. Mr. Hamilton, a squat, portly gentleman, with grey hair swept back from a florid forehead, and wearing tweed rather than flannel, had beamed most benignly at me, like a benevolent uncle, and having first expressed his sympathies, had then informed me, once he'd settled himself down on the other side of his leather-topped desk, that this sudden windfall was not as unusual as I thought. Many people died without making a will, he told me. Lawyers mostly, would you believe? And even though Mr. Faulkner had been 76, not the ancient 90-odd Mum had clearly invented, he might not have seen it coming and quite got his affairs in order. Or perhaps he had, he added kindly. Perhaps he'd deliberately left things ambiguous. Some people do. If only so that others have to sort it all out for them. Let them make the decisions. It avoids favoritism. You can see the attraction. Yes, I can. I could. But I wouldn't do it myself. Let the living have the headache of sorting it out, as I'd had to do when David had died. On the other hand, if it were a lovely surprise, as it was slowly dawning on me Mr. Hamilton was suggesting it was, it could be a delightful way to do things. A certain amount was sitting, obviously, in a straightforward savings account. He passed across a piece of paper topped with the Barclays logo and tailed with a row of numbers at the bottom that made my eyes boggle. And a small amount in shares, not much, but blue-chip reliable ones like Sainsbury's and ICI. Another piece of paper, with nothing very small-looking, found its way across. But I'm afraid death duties will pretty much swallow up all of those, because, property-wise, you have quite an asset. The jewel in the crown. The property in Lastow Mews, which you'll need to have valued. But if nearby houses or anything to go by, would conservatively be worth about this amount. As much as that? I'd whispered as he'd passed across another document with vast numbers on it and details of deeds of ownership to pass immediately. Plus my name, Molly Victoria Faulkner. It was at this point I wished I'd had one of the children with me, just so they could verify this fairy story was really happening. And was not some fantastical dream. I'd turned them all down flatly as they'd swiftly lined up to accompany me, even Lucy, who I knew would be taking notes now, asking pertinent questions, being useful, because I'd wanted to do this on my own. To think about it carefully, not be taken over by them. But, Mum, you'll want one of us just to get you there. Last time you went to London, you ended up in New Barnet, thinking you were in New Bond Street. That was a totally understandable mistake, Minna, and rest assured I shall keep my wits about me this time. I used to live in London. I worked there, for heaven's sake. Now, as I tottered along the pavement in the sunshine, chic women sailing past, swinging smart handbags, rather than clutching ancient ones to their chest, I couldn't help feeling they were right. I lowered my bag. I was a bit out of my depth, but actually so intensely excited too that I could do without Lucy bossily steering me to the nearest estate agents, or the others' excited chatter about how I should spend the money as soon as I got my hands on it. No, this gave me some valuable time to think. This amount of real estate was much more than I'd ever imagined. It was a veritable lottery win, and far more than I'd dreamed it might be. It was too early for a drink to steady my nerves, but I certainly needed a black coffee. I found a pavement cafe down the road and sat in the sunshine dressed in my very best skirt and shoes, letting it slowly sink in that, for the first time in my life, I was wealthy, really rich. As I sat there in the sun, I felt my old self float up to a tiny cloud and perch on it, and look down at the new me, realizing all the things I could do. Pay off the mortgage, refence the fields, fertilize and spray the fields instead of hoping for the best, dredge the river which flooded every year, repair the roof on the house and the barns, repoint the stables, sort out the damp downstairs and the dry rot upstairs. Oh, the list was endless. Or maybe not even stay there, I thought with a jolt. Maybe get shot of the whole money-draining shooting match and buy a lovely house in the village, with 4 bedrooms and a manageable garden, or even one an hour's drive away on the coast. Put the rest of the money in the bank and never have to work, worry, or wheel a deal again. I almost had to pinch myself to believe it could be happening to me. But a glimpse at my phone with all of my children leaving demanding messages. Well, any news? What's the story, Mum? All confirmed it was true. With mounting excitement, I turned my phone off, paid for the coffee, and on the strength of my newfound wealth, hailed a taxi to Lastow Mews. The taxi driver gave me a strange look as he picked me up, and then deposited me no more than 2 streets away. It clearly would have made much more sense to walk. As I paid him, I glanced across to where the road ended in an abrupt brick wall. Under an arch, though, another road began, a narrow, cobbled affair, all the little houses within painted pretty pastel shades, like the colours in an Italian ice cream parlour, yellow, pink, green and blue. As the taxi purred away, I hurried across and under the arch. Across the cobbles I stole, like a thief casing the joint, passing doors flanked by bay trees, standing sentry in cast-iron urns, sleek, comfortable motors, even a stone griffin or 2, glancing at the numbers on the doors. Could it be that darling, palest pink one near the end? Almost not pink at all, just very faint blush. It was number 32. I almost gasped as I stopped opposite, handbag to chest again. Oh, Uncle Cuthbert, I said instead under my breath. Obviously it wasn't mine yet. Mr. Hamilton had told me various documents had to be drawn up and signed in probate, and then signed by him again, and that could take time. But I imagined it was empty, so why couldn't I creep a little closer and at least stand and marvel? Marvel, too, that we'd never known this man, with such exquisite taste, who clearly wouldn't be seen dead on a shabby little small holding in Herefordshire. I gazed some more, almost at the window now, noting the dear little window boxes frothing over with something white and tasteful, the terracotta pots outside. Having feasted for a moment, I was about to walk away, back up the Mews to the pub, when a young woman approached, smiled, and put her key in the front door of the blush-pink house. My house. She looked at me inquiringly. "Can I help?" Only 3 words, but within them a whole world of expensive boarding schools and a daddy in the city. "Oh!" I hustled a few steps towards her. Age was on my side, but little else. She was very slim, with that pale, almost translucent, blonde beauty one sees in fashion magazines. She was behaving proprietorially, too, as if she lived here. My heart pumped a bit. Well, it's just that, this house belonged to my late uncle, you see. At least my husband's late uncle. And the thing is, I've just been to see the lawyers and... Oh! She interrupted, eyes widening. She lowered her key. You're Cuthbert's niece? Well... Oh, I'm so sorry, she said, looking genuinely upset. I must have missed you at the funeral. It was so crowded, wasn't it? You could hardly move. Oh, Unsurprising, of course, he was such a heavenly man. Yes, quite. I could feel myself reddening. And so young for his age. It was so unexpected. I honestly thought he'd go on forever. Young for his age? So not with a rug over his knees and 2 sticks. The old witch, my mum. Well, yes, except... I lunged heroically for the truth. We didn't really know him, I'm afraid. We live miles away, deep in the countryside, practically in Wales. And we only heard very recently. My own husband died some time ago, you see, and I'm afraid I didn't keep up the connection. And you are? Oh, Camilla, I clean, or did. She blinked a bit, clearly upset at this use of the past tense. She cleaned. Right. Although actually, on reflection, it didn't surprise me. I knew about these smart girls who were turning their hands to cleaning and laundering, now that secretarial jobs had dried up, courtesy of computers. Minna had thought about it as a route to London. And ironed his shirts, too, that sort of thing. But dear Cuthbert, he paid me a month in advance, always did. So no way was I not going to come in and dust and hoover, she said fiercely. He'd been horrified. He was quite particular. Would you like to come in? Oh, thank you. I don't know if I should. Oh, Cuthbert would have wanted it. After all, your family. Yes, I said, emboldened. And the thing is, the lawyer tells me, the one I've just been to see, that because I'm the only family left, I'm inheriting his estate. I tried not to sound too breathless or excited. Inheriting? She turned, looked shocked, then quickly whipped around and opened the door. Does that surprise you? I ventured, following her inside. Oh, no, it's just I thought... It clearly did, and she made an effort to compose her face as she shut the door behind us and led me via a narrow hallway with a Persian runner into a pretty sitting room with French windows at one end, through which the sun poured. A terraced garden surrounded by deep beds of frothy pink tulips and forget-me-nots could be glimpsed beyond. But delightful though the garden was, it was the interior that was arresting. Original modern paintings filled every inch of wall space, almost down to the skirting boards, and right up to the picture rails. Nudes, portraits, or simply great swaths of colour I didn't understand, but which looked terrific. All around the room they marched, aside from beside the fireplace were 2 shelved alcoves, groaned with books, all hardbacks, and all improving. In one quick glance around, I understood that Uncle Cuthbert was cultured, educated, and urbane. The air was stale, though, and Camilla went straight to the French windows, unlocking them and flinging them wide, explaining that the wake had only happened the day before yesterday, and she hadn't been in since, and as you can imagine, it was fairly protracted and alcohol-fueled, and the place still reeked. It was held here. Of course, why not? What a shame you couldn't come. She looked at me rather suspiciously now. It occurred to me I'd have loved to have known this man. One who could fill a house at his wake and clearly had a vibrant and interesting life. Camilla, what did Cuthbert do? I mean, I imagine he was retired, but before that? Oh, he was only semi-retired, she said, as she led the way out of the sitting room and into the kitchen. He still sat on the Arts Council committee, and was a fellow at the V&A and on the board of the ICA and various other places. Everyone wanted him. He was still frightfully busy. Well, you would be if you'd been at Christie's all those years. Right. I wish I'd known him. He sounds like a delightful man. He was. She raised her chin and looked at me squarely. Everyone loved him. I didn't really know of his existence, I said quickly. Just a name, not even a Christmas card. She nodded. Everyone has relatives like that, names rather than faces. They do, don't they? I felt comforted. It also occurred to me that he hadn't rushed to introduce himself when David had died, or offered to help afterwards. Why should I be feeling guilty? Surely the onus, 5 years ago, had been on him to make himself known. So when does the house become yours? She asked casually. I couldn't help noticing, as I sat down behind her at the kitchen table, that there was a breakfast plate with crumbs and a marmalade jar and butter dish. Both had their tops off. Was someone living here? I'm not sure, I recovered. When probate's been sorted out, I imagine. So you've come straight from the lawyers? I blushed. Yes. There was a pause. Well, if you want a cleaner, she said, slightly forced jollity. She delved into her jeans pocket, handed me a card which read, The Bennett Girls, the Little Treasures. My sister and I run it. We also take your laundry away, and I'll have it back the next day, water your plants, feed the cat, and walk the dogs. Anything rarely. I read history of art at Edinburgh, but, hey, these days so did everybody. She shrugged. I smiled. Yes, I have a daughter like that. She's got a big brain and she runs a flower shop. I know what it's like. She smiled gratefully and I felt we were making progress. She nodded at the card in my hand. I even did some correspondence for Cuthbert. Right, thanks. I pocketed it. I'll bear it in mind. So you'll be in and out for a month then? Well, as I say, he paid me. She gave me a steady look as if daring me to suggest that she shouldn't be in and out of this house. And I wasn't sure where my rights were. Who did own this house? Right, well, I'll be off. Thanks so much for letting me look around. As I went down the hall, Camilla tailing me, I glanced upstairs. I'd offer for you to look up there, but I haven't got round to tidying up yet, she said quickly as she opened the front door. Oh, no, I wouldn't dream of it. I shouldn't even be in here. Thank you, Camilla. I went down the 2 front steps, feeling her eyes on my back, and not necessarily in a friendly way. Both of us, I knew, had been unnerved by that meeting. She shut the door. Boy, I really did need a drink now, I thought, as I hurried back up the cobbled mews. The sun was high in the sky, and I wished I'd thought to bring sunglasses. I wished, too, that I hadn't gone into that house. I felt as if I'd compromised myself in some way. Put myself on the back foot. I bit my lip. London was looking at its most ravishing, though, all bright and white and beautiful, the gleam of the huge houses that surrounded the mews, tall and striking against the blue sky. I raised my head defiantly, swung my bag, and strode on towards the pub across the road, bound for the tables with umbrellas outside. Thinking this was the first time I'd drunk alone in public for years. Obviously I'd done plenty of it in private, but that the situation demanded it, and with time to think, I went inside and ordered a gin and tonic at the bar. As I took it outside, a group of people clustered under a parasol, heads lowered over their drinks, looked horribly familiar. I stopped in my tracks, stared. What the... Lucy, Minna, and Nico emerged from sun hats, caps, and dark glasses and regarded me sheepishly as they sat up. What are you doing here? I blustered, nearly dropping my gin. Having a drink? Minna ventured, pulling up an empty chair. I gaped. Oh, right, at the very pub where I just happened to be having a drink too? How did you know I was here? We followed you, Nico said candidly. Bloody stupid to take a cab, though, Mum. We managed to nip in right after that on foot. You followed me? What, from home? Well, obviously. We got the next train up, not yours, but we knew the lawyers you were going to and what time, and we do live in London. You don't, I reminded Nico, sitting down. You live with me, and so does Minna. No, but I fully intend to be up here next year, and so does Min. Come on, give. What's the bottom line? The bottom line? I echoed incredulously, and then, actually, I couldn't control my excitement. I leaned forward. Well, my chickadees, the bottom line is... And I told them about the bank account and the rows of zeros, and then the shares and how these would be cancelled out because of the house, which I'd just been to see, and how much it was worth. There were gasps of astonishment. Mouths fell open. Silence. Then whoops of glee. Wow. Blimey. You're kidding, Mum. Nico was out of his seat. No, I'm not kidding, I assured them as he sat again, loving their shining eyes. I hadn't seen that for a while. We'd had a lot of sad eyes, a lot of worried eyes, a lot of brave eyes, but not eyes like these. It's like a lottery win, said Minna slowly, gazing into space. Isn't it? It's like someone's waved a wand and gone, ta-da! Your life is going to change. She turned to me, dazed. Oh, Mum, you so needed this, breathed Lucy beside me. She leaned across and hugged me, her eyes damp. We so needed this, I reminded her, thinking it was ages since she'd hugged me. All of us, I said as we drew apart. It belongs to all of us. It goes to me because everything of Dad's goes to me, but it's all of ours. We sipped our drinks thoughtfully, and I felt the ice and tonic sparkle on my tongue. We could go on posh holidays, said Nico suddenly. Go to Corfu like all my mates, hire a villa. Stuff Corfu, let's hire a yacht. Go to the Caribbean, Minna squeaked. Well, no, I don't think we should do that, but what we will do, I told them, is pay off the mortgage. Oh, yes, they agreed soberly, thinking, no, the Caribbean. But I also think we should celebrate, I told them, when it comes through. Definitely, they chorused, perking up. Then I told them about the house I'd just seen and what I knew of their late great-uncle. Minna whistled. Crikey, who would have thought our only relative left on Dad's side, and he's been sitting there all those years. How come we didn't know him? Nico demanded. I don't know, I said truthfully. I mean, he came to our wedding, apparently. I found the list the other day and checked it. But I simply don't remember him. Also, I think he worked in America for a while. That much I'd gleaned from Mr. Hamilton. He was at Christie's in New York. He and Dad must have simply lost touch. I mean, he wasn't my relative. And yet he left his entire estate to you, said Lucy. Well, no, he didn't, did he? He just didn't make a will. And the thing is, I hesitated, well, I think there's someone living there in his house. I told them about the breakfast things and not being allowed upstairs. Did you ask her, this Camilla? No, I didn't, because I felt she was being a bit evasive, a bit mysterious. Lucy stared at me. Well, whatever or whoever it is, it's no concern of yours, Mum, she said firmly. If Cuthbert let a friend stay there before he died, let's suppose, they'll know the score by now. Know they have to get out when it passes to you. Exactly, agreed Minna. Which is when? Well, I'm not sure, I said vaguely, remembering how heartbroken I'd been when David had died, wondering if this person perhaps was quite close to this colourful, delightful man, and was feeling the same pain. I'm not sure you should have gone in there, said Lucy, frowning as she cradled her drink. It sort of compromises you, puts you on the back foot. Oh, no, I disagree, I said, colouring. She sent me a level gaze. Just hold on before you do anything else. Let me check with Robin. Robin was her lawyer boyfriend. Okay, I said meekly. Mum, said Nico softly, Derek and I have got this idea right for a business. Derek was one of his mates, a gnomic individual who smoked a lot of weed and, as far as I knew, had never had an idea in his life. It's an app you use at festivals, right, to find out where your mates are? It's been done, interjected Minna. No, it hasn't, not the way we'd do it. But we do need a bit of a cash injection, like any startup company, to get off the ground, set up a database, that kind of thing. It has been done, agreed Lucy, and anyway, Mum will be far more likely to back an established business like mine. She turned to me, looking important. The lease has come up for sale, Mum, on the shop, and obviously it's horrendously expensive. I couldn't possibly do it on my own. I'd have to get a bank loan. But I was thinking this windfall couldn't have come at a better time, because if you could just lend me the deposit. Lend? Interrupted Nico. Half an hour ago you were talking about us being the rightful recipients, seeing as how we're actual blood relatives and Mum's only a niece-in-law, you said. Nico! Lucy coloured. You did! The two others chorused. Mum, ignore him. I absolutely did not. I mean, sure, I pointed out that the bloodline, but I wasn't trying to, jump the queue or anything. I was just saying that we need to act as a family on this one. Since a lease for sale on a shop in a desirable area of Islington is worth snapping up, as far as all of us are concerned. You've already got a business, Minna said angrily. I'm the one who needs to invest in something, in this field for the polytunnels, Mum, to grow flowers. We agreed so she doesn't have to buy from suppliers. Yes, that would be good, Lucy conceded, so long as the flowers are top quality. So forget about buying a lease on the shop and let's start with the tunnels. We could even do it on our own land, now that we can afford to get it cultivated. Become proper market gardeners. What do you think, Mum? Mum? But I was miles away, or not so far as it happened, about 200 metres, because from where I was sitting opposite the arched entrance in the wall, I could see right down the cobbled mews, and my eyes had followed a tall, fair-haired man in jeans, a mint green shirt, no socks and moccasins, brown ankles, all the way down it, to stop at the one I'd so recently visited. He took a key out of his back pocket and fitted it in the lock, looked to the left and the right, and went inside. A few moments later, indeed almost simultaneously, Camilla emerged. She went across to the black Mini Cooper, reversed down the mews, and turned left in the direction of Knightsbridge. Mum, I turned back to my family. We said, what are your plans? What do you intend to do with the money? They looked rather contrite, faces a bit pink, ashamed of their bickering. I drained my drink. I don't know. I'm going to think about it. Come on, let's go. I cast another look back towards the house. Where? Not all the way back home, surely. I've just got here. This came from Nico. You can all stay at mine. Sophia's away, said Lucy charitably, no doubt still chastened by her niece-in-law remark. You too, Mum? Really? I'd never been to Lucy's. She met my eye. Of course, why not? Well, it was cosy, to say the least, in Lucy's tiny, lower ground floor flat in Earl's Court. Once she'd allocated the bedrooms, we shared a huge dish of pasta which she cooked in the minute galley kitchen, pans clattering, radio blaring, steam billowing. I'd wanted to help, but hadn't liked to. Something about her purposeful demeanour had said it was her domain. I did lay the coffee table, though, and pulled up the sofa and 2 chairs either side. Not too far to pull, it was a very small room. And as we ate, we commented on the footwear of people passing by in the top of the window, the only available light space, which was a favourite game with Sophia, Lucy told us, passing around the Parmesan. She could have rented in Holloway, I thought. Finsbury Park, even. Much nearer to the shop. And had much more light and space, but Lucy was all about location. All her friends were around here, she said. What was the point of going out to dinner in Chelsea and then heading back to Holloway night after night? Well, quite. The only direction Lucy was travelling was back to what she considered to be her rightful roots. Where she'd come from and where she considered she still should be now. It was a dreary little place, though, I thought, glancing about at the magnolia wood-chipped walls, even though I'd enthused about it when I'd walked in. Straight into the sitting room, no hall, so junk mail clattered through the letterbox. And even though the two girls had done their best with huge mirrors, pictures, throws over cheap sofas, and it no doubt cost a fortune, too, so could I afford to buy all the children a flat and still have some left to do up the farm? Just how expensive was London? I mustn't forget the farm was mortgaged now. I'd had to do that after the death duties. Perhaps I shouldn't make promises about flats or businesses that I couldn't keep. Just wait until it all dropped in my lap. The children, however, had no such restraints. Mouths full of tagliatelle and pesto, and getting thoroughly overexcited on the bottles of wine we'd bought at the liquor store en route, they decided that obviously all the bills had to be paid and the mortgage and all the boring things I'd outlined. But after that, said Nico, looking at me, you'll be living in a tarted-up farmhouse with pristine fences and healthy, well-fed sheep, and you'll never have to sell a dodgy mare again. Exactly, I said happily. In the middle of nowhere, he added, with someone doing your cleaning, leaving you in an immaculate, empty house when they're gone. Quite. I looked at him doubtfully now. No friends, added Minna, because all your real friends are in London, and you're too busy and sad to socialise. We all went quiet. Well, I've got Tia. Because she's the bailiff. And Anna? Except she's even busier than you are, so you never see her. My book group? Which you never go to. I hesitated, raised my chin. Granny and Grandpa? Who hustled down there when Dad died so you wouldn't be lonely. I gazed around at them, had a feeling they'd had a long chat before I made it to the pub. What are you saying? What we're saying, Mum, said Lucy, is there's no real reason for you to be buried deep in the country now. You could sell the whole balls-aching affair, agreed Nico. And live where? Here, in London, where you used to live, where all your friends are. But I've made a life for myself down there, a rural idyll. It was our dream. It was Dad's dream, said Lucy firmly. You never wanted to go. You told us that years ago, although you never say it now. And Dad's dead. My eyes filled. But I have to finish what he started, I said fiercely. Have to. You don't. You don't have to do anything. Dad wouldn't have wanted that. And we know why he wanted to stay, because he loved it so much, because it made you feel closer to him. But you have stayed for 5 years. More. It's time to move on, Nico insisted. I have moved on, I said stubbornly, aware I was being subjected to a pincer move. You haven't. You've hidden behind your busy higgledy-piggledy life, which you've done brilliantly, Lucy added quickly. Behind never sitting still, but you haven't always been out with anyone or anything like that, and you're gorgeous, Mum. Everyone says so. Sophia thinks you look like Kristen Scott Thomas. It's such a waste. Dad would agree. This caused me to breathe in sharply. It was said urgently, but gently and sensitively too. I have been out with people. I mean, you made me. 2 suppers, precisely 2. One with Peter Cox, who, okay, is a bit dull, but one with Paddy Campbell, who is seriously hot and who was seriously into you. And you're so rude to him, Mum." "Me? Rude to him? He's always so cross and disagreeable." "Because the one and only time you let him take you out, you talked non-stop about Dad, and the next time you stood him up." I forgot, that's all." So he was left in the pub with all his clients around, all the people whose animals he looks after, at a table for 2 in the window. "Bummer. I'd be cross," said Nico. "Oh, I apologised. I mean, you're making a big deal out of it, and anyway, it was ages ago," I said airily. But I remembered it well. And I hadn't forgotten at all. I'd been in the car park, unable to get out of the car, sitting in the dark, physically unable to go in. Had driven home in tears. Pathetic. He's too bad-tempered," I said, sticking to what was indisputable. "You'd be bad-tempered too if you'd been dumped and had to carry on seeing your dumper," put in Minna heatedly. "I'm always bumping into Ted, and I just want to knee him in the balls." "I thought you dumped him," objected Nico. "You said—" It's beside the point, Nico," she said furiously. "We're talking about Mum here and how she should move on, not me." "Well, you brought him up." "And that includes being open to different suggestions," agreed Lucy, "like possibly moving back here. We're not dyed-in-the-wool country dwellers, Mum. We weren't born in barns. We were born in Wandsworth." "No, I can't," I said, almost gripping the table. No, we know," the girls said quickly in unison. "No, not there, not Wandsworth." I simply couldn't go back to Wandsworth, which I loved so much, had never wanted to leave. I couldn't go back to my gorgeous Victorian villa, or something similar, in that grid of leafy, wide roads near the common, with the wine bars and the bookshops and boutiques, where I'd pushed prams and done school runs, where my best friends still lived, the ones I'd met at the school gates. Caroline, Rosie, Sylvia, all with their children no doubt in clever universities now, Durham and Bristol and Cambridge, and with their lives, their husbands. How could I go back so bereft? I would be even more bereft after all these years. At least in Herefordshire I didn't have the comparison. And my lovely job in PR, in the old days full-time and then 4 days a week with small children, and in the end, when we could afford it, just 3, Monday to Wednesday, which had been heaven, leaving me 2 whole days to play a bit of tennis, a bit of bridge, catch up with the house, the children fully immersed in long school days, occupied. It had been an enviable life. How could I go back? I looked at them aghast, hurt they'd even suggested it. "Obviously not home, I mean in Wandsworth, but London's huge," said Lucy. "Where then? I mean, I don't know anywhere else." "Well, why not where you actually already own a house?" Lucy jerked her head meaningfully. "Why not number 32? "In South Ken?" I really did gasp now. "So smart." "Why not?" Well, I don't know anyone." "Which is what you want, isn't it? Not to go backwards, a fresh start. But you wouldn't be quite so grief-stricken, quite so complicated," said Minna softly. Since when had my children become so wise? A minute ago they were arguing about who got what when it was sold, and now they wanted me to live in it. I tried to imagine it, found that I could. I could see myself coming out of the shiny white front door, tripping down the cobbled street to the little expensive shops with their shiny regular vegetables in pristine straw baskets outside, buying groceries, becoming frightfully grown up and civilized, and no one would know me. It was far enough away, as they said, from Wandsworth. Surely I'd done my time in the country. I began to feel excited. I saw myself greeting my neighbours as they emerged from their pretty ice-cream-coloured houses, other civilised Kensington women, off to Sloane Square, no doubt, promising to pop in for G&T later. Not for soul-searching chats like I would in Bolingbroke Road, really getting to the bottom of things, roaring with laughter over a bottle of Chardonnay. Those days were gone. But popping in for light chit-chat, bridge, just enough. I'd had dear friends, bosom buddies. I didn't want them again. I'd had a dear husband. Didn't ever want one again either, or a partner, or even a boyfriend. Whatever the children thought. I could feel their eyes on me now as I turned it all around in my head, digested it. Could feel the far-off thrill of a distant possibility, something I hadn't felt for a very long time. For precisely 5 years and 10 months, but a thrill of a different nature, one I was entitled to, not someone else's. "Bound to have 3 bedrooms," observed Nico. I turned to him. "Do you think? Maybe even 4. No, it looked smaller." I cast my mind back, remembering the ground floor layout. "So 1 for you, 1 for me, and 1 for the girls when Lucy's home." Yes. I looked around. So we'd all be together. Something we clearly weren't going to be at the farm anymore, not with Lucy in London, having opted out of university, Minna following exactly the same path, and Nico in his final year at school. I'd see so much more of you," I said excitedly. "Exactly," said Lucy. "I'd keep this flat on. It's too much of a find not to. But Sunday lunches, midweek suppers." "Yes," I breathed. "And I could live with you till I found somewhere," said Minna. "Maybe even for a year or 2. I'd love that." "Cool. And I'll be in London next year. Jake wants to come too. Maybe go to art college." Nico's blue eyes shone. "There's a garden," I said eagerly, "for Moppet and Flo. Or do you think they'd be happier, maybe with Anna?" "Certainly not," said Lucy. "People have dogs in London. Do not rehouse them. They're only little terriers, albeit a bit feral." "Right," I agreed. No object too big suddenly. "And you can walk in the park with friends like you used to," enthused Nico before the girls shot him a look. "Kensington Gardens," said Lucy quickly, "not Battersea." "No," I agreed quickly, "not Battersea. Not bumping into anyone I knew or used to know with their dogs, who we used to walk regularly there, and then drop them off back at home in their baskets and raced on to Pilates or tennis, then lunch with a friend. Our lives, our lovely lives, until I'd wrecked it. And so we'd moved. David had decided we'd move. And then, well, I'd really finished it off completely, although the children had no idea. They just knew I couldn't go back. As I put the plates in the sink, I watched them from the kitchen, leaning across the coffee table where we'd perched to have our scratch supper, heads close, resuming their excited chatter. They had absolutely no idea what I'd done.